I was younger, I loved watching TV. When all the other kids were playing catch with their dads or seeing who could run the fastest, I was inside, completely amazed by the casts of characters and make-believe worlds. Some of my best memories have even come from this fascination with pop culture. Like, for example, me and my brother watching episode after episode of Blue's Clues or trying to sneak a look at the murder mysteries my parents watched on weekends. I became obsessed with these characters, and they soon became the role models that I aspired to be like. I dreamt of being a Hannah Montana or a Kim Possible, and I tried my hardest every day to be exactly like them. Of course, this obsession with TV taught me valuable things like the value of friendship, loyalty, how to distinguish right from wrong, etc., etc. But it did come with some serious downfalls. Despite the obvious, which would be my current Netflix watching problem, the real effect of this fascination was purely mental. You see, I grew up as a very small, scrawny, brown girl, but all of these women who I idolized so greatly were all blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and white. Now, upon realizing the differences between me and these women, I began to ask why I didn't look like them. It was then explained to me that all people have different colored skin and that I was beautiful no matter what. My 6-year-old self didn't believe that for a second. You see, I was living in a world where I couldn't be who I wanted. But here comes the worst part. My thought process was, if I couldn't look like these women who I idolized so greatly, I would never be pretty. TV had taught me that girls who were shown on TV were normal, which only cemented my belief that I was abnormal. TV had taught me that girls with blonde hair and blue eyes were the ones who got boyfriends, had fun, and were successful in life. I thought that I would never experience any of this just because I never saw anyone like me on TV. Now, the story might not seem like anything to any of you, but in reality, the lack of diversity in our media is a huge problem, which affects not only me, but people everywhere. Now, if you're a little skeptic at the point that I'm trying to prove here, let's start at the beginning with the word Eurocentrism. Eurocentrism is the implied belief that European or Western culture is better than other cultures. Now, Eurocentrism is evident everywhere, but is especially evident within our media and TV. Now, you may be thinking, okay, I get it, Eurocentrism exists, but how is it in our media? I see people of color on TV all the time. Well, in reality, the facts prove otherwise. In 2015, only 20% of lead roles went to minorities. Now, you may be thinking, okay, that number is not great, but at least it's still there, why should we care? But it does matter, because somewhere out there, there's a little girl staring at the TV crying because she can never look like her favorite character. Perhaps one of the greatest effects of this Eurocentrism and lack of diversity is how it destroys the self-esteem of girls in cultures like mine. In cultures like mine, a girl is told to sit in the shade so she doesn't get dark, and is praised when she's at her lightest. Bollywood actresses act as a standard for lightness. Skin lightening is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and people go so far as to bleach their own skin to achieve the standard of lightness. Darker women have always been considered less desirable in our society, and this lack of diversity on TV only encourages this belief. Perhaps one of the worst effects of this lack of diversity is how it affects our children. And this can be shown through an experiment called the Clark doll experiment of 1939. In this experiment, 2 identical baby dolls were placed in front of African American children. The only difference was, one was white and one was black. These children were asked to identify which doll was the nice doll and which doll was the bad doll. In almost every single case, the white doll was named as the nice one. Then these children were asked to identify which doll they resembled the most, and of course, the black doll was chosen, which they had just labeled as bad. This experiment has been repeated countless times in history, and the results have always been the exact same. Why do we live in a world where by the age of 5, a child has already realized that the color of their skin is bad? What message is the media sending our children? Are we teaching them to self-hate before they learn to talk? Sadly, instances like these are more common than we think, and it might seem like there's nothing we can do about it, but really, there's a very simple solution that people have been overlooking for years. If you want to show minorities that they're just as important as anyone else, just put more minorities on television. It may seem crazy that something so small could affect so many, when in reality, what we see on TV can affect our entire lives. Now, to put into perspective the lack of roles for people of color, we can turn towards this year's Oscars. Now, out of all of the actors and actresses nominated for their amazing work, all of them were white. And of course, all the blame can't be put on the Oscars for this, but most of the blame can be put on TV producers and creators for not writing roles for people of color. After becoming the first African American woman to win Best Actress in a Drama, Viola Davis said this: "The only thing that separates women of color from anyone else is opportunity. You can't win awards for roles that are simply not there." By providing these role models on TV for minorities, they'll feel included and not like they have to change themselves to be accepted. Now, from what I've told you so far, it might seem like there's been no progress on this issue, when in reality, 2015 was an amazing year for diversity, with the introduction of shows like The Mindy Project and Fresh Off the Boat. These were a great change that were much needed, but it's still not enough. For example, have you noticed when a person of color is lucky enough to be portrayed on TV, it's through a stereotype? Have you noticed how their personality is almost always flooded by their race, and how their racial characteristics are overplayed to add humor to a plot line? This racial discrimination that we see on TV seems to be a large reason as to why we see discrimination in our everyday lives. We need to stop rejecting other cultures and start accepting them. We need to start welcoming in other cultures rather than taking the parts we want and using them for comic relief. Now, if you've taken nothing from this talk so far, just remember this: what we see on TV not only affects how we feel about our own selves, but it affects how we feel about each other. TV can make us feel like we're better or worse than someone just because of how praised or criticized we are in the media. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. This whitewashing of the media affects all of us. Whether you're a person of color upset because of this lack of diversity, or just someone watching TV that portrays a person of color a certain way, this lack of diversity affects all of us, whether we realize it or not. Overall, TV can be exciting, it can be funny, heartbreaking, inspiring, and most of all, it can serve as an escape for someone who might not have something like that in their lives. I just hope that one day, everyone will be able to experience TV like this, the way I did as a child, completely carefree and in love with it, the way it's supposed to be, not the way that I and many others like me experience it today. Thank you.